Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a US Politics Extra. I just want to give you a microcosm, a kind of a representation of everything that's going on in the US political landscape at the moment. And I think this is really representative. It's about disinformation. It's about obvious fact, but it's about narratives that are being perpetuated and thus quashing reality and fact, but also these talking points of freedom of speech and things like this that are ways to kind of silence criticism, but also evidence or examples, if you like, of rank hypocrisy. So you hear freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech all the time. And then at every conceivable opportunity, those who are shouting about freedom of speech the loudest appear to be the ones that want to quash freedom of speech when it suits them. And it's kind of one rule for one and different rule for everyone else. This is a fascinating interaction. And we're going to start with the Texas lawmaker Jasmine Crockett, who is a former lawyer who is doing an absolutely fabulous job of being a great spokesperson for the Democrats at the moment. She's really on point every time I hear her. We have Jim Jordan here, her Jim Jordan with a GYM there. He's a disreputable chappie given his past and the sexual abuse allegations when he was a wrestling coach that he didn't do anything about, and all the controversy that surrounded that. So I've never particularly liked this man, and he's also a member of the Freedom Caucus. Freedom of speech fits in there a lot, but basically Freedom Caucus is the MAGA wing really of the House Republicans, people like Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, those kind of people. And then we have Jamie Raskin as a constitutional expert and a legal expert who chimes in at the end to show Jim Jordan's massive hypocrisy. So I'm going to start with Jasmine Crockett, and I think she's just absolutely on point here, and so it's worth listening to the whole speech that she gives.
Who seeks recognition? Gentlelady, Ms. Crockett is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It's so interesting to me that we all swear an oath to the Constitution, and we say that we take that oath seriously. But when it comes into actually doing something that looks like preserving that oath or looks like preserving the Constitution, we get a little wobbly, and I'm not really understanding what's going on. Freedom of press doesn't look like kicking out the Washington Post, or actually the Huffington Post has been kicked out. We know that the Associated Press has been kicked out, and now the Washington Post is not going to allow for op-eds in any way if for some reason they criticize the sitting president of the United States.
And this is the news, I've got it actually in another section here. This is the news that Jeff Bezos is going to, he has already done it, going to shape the opinion pages in the Washington Post that he owns in a way where it's going to be used as a vehicle to support the Trump administration. He's essentially said, look, the opinion pages are going to be embracing, quote, personal liberties and free markets. But reading between the lines, and given David Shipley said, right, as a Post opinion editor says, I'm off after trying to get Jeff Bezos to reconsider. It's basically what is really happening is he's trying to align it with the Trump administration. Remember, he already has paid, because he owns Amazon, he's paid $40 million for the rights to a Melania Trump-produced documentary that is a way essentially of him just giving money to Trump via another means. That is not at all worth $40 million, and it is a way of him appeasing Trump, getting Trump on side, and moving the Washington Post, first of all saying that it can't it wasn't allowed to, and I think Jasmine Crockett talks to this, but it wasn't allowed to endorse a candidate before the election, where it had previously on his behest. And then that money transfer, now this op-ed scenario, he's just aligning everything with the Trump administration.
What this is starting to feel like is a smaller version of Russia. And I am trying to tell you that we are nothing like Russia. We are not supposed to be like Russia. But that is what we've got going on. And I'm sorry, I know that some of my colleagues still struggle with answering the question of who won the election in 2020. And you may have felt a way when you had social media checking people and saying, no, Trump did not win the election in 2020. That is absolutely factual. And unfortunately, because some people got all riled up because they believed the lies, they ended up getting locked up because they decided that they were going to believe the lies. They ended up at the Capitol on January 6th, and they were trying to tear this thing apart because they felt like their country was falling apart in front of their eyes because for whatever reason, there were people in power that were peddling a lie about the election. We also know, and some of y'all may still say that COVID was a hoax. COVID wasn't a hoax. Tell that to the over 1 million people that died under Donald Trump's first watch. It wasn't a hoax. So no, I do believe that it was okay. In fact, I do believe that it was ethically right for social media to check people because you had people that didn't know anything about science and decided that they were going to put out whatever lies or propaganda or conspiracy theories they wanted to. And people died. At some point in time, we have to evaluate what is factual. And I know that facts hurt y'all, and I just wish we could get on the same page, but we do know during the presidential election that the president would not go and participate in anything if fact-checking was going to be a part of it, because he didn't want to be fact-checked. We know that the vice president got upset in his vice presidential debate when he was fact-checked. It used to be a time in this country that we as members of Congress or elected officials thought that it was okay to just tell the truth. Instead, we're pushing conspiracy theories, and some of them are killing people. It's the same thing that we have coming out of Doge. It's the reason that people are dying. It's the reason that farmers are losing their farms, because we continue to peddle conspiracy theories. It is time for us to say, Mr. President, guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Can we at least agree on that one? Facts matter. Y'all, this is literally potentially putting us into an international crisis. We may be heading towards the next world war because we have a president that wants to pal around with Putin and wants to do everything to make him feel good, including lying about who invaded who. Mr. Chair, I got a minute left, but I really want to yield to any of my colleagues and ask them if they will say today, very basically, that when it came down to the war in Ukraine, that it was not Ukraine that invaded Russia, it was the other way around. Is there anybody in here that has enough courage to say that Russia invaded Ukraine?
You can have my time.
And this is yet the problem. This is the problem. That is not infringing upon free speech.
Will the gentlelady yield?
I will yield to the right.
Thank you, Ms. Crockett.
That was in the context of several prominent people, including the nominee for Deputy Defense Secretary, Deputy Secretary of Defense, refused to answer Tammy Duckworth's question of did Russia invade Ukraine? And he didn't answer it. Pete Hegseth has also refused to answer it at times. And so we have this situation where Republicans are just denying reality or not being upfront about Russia and Ukraine. They're compromised by the position of the administration, or the administration are pandering to Russia. And she's had enough. And I like that. But this is all about, this is a very complex issue, freedom of speech, because people like the idea of freedom of speech, and I've done many videos on this, but it is a fundamentally flawed concept because it's impractical, right? To be a free speech absolutist is not something that anyone would advocate being, because you wouldn't advocate your 12-year-old child shouting racial slurs and swear words and invectives all a day long in class, right? So you say, well, that's unacceptable. You get detention for that, or we remove you out of the class, because, you know, you don't just go, oh, freedom of speech, yeah, let them say what they like, and then everyone else is shouting, and then it just is chaos. You know, you don't shout fire in a theatre, you don't shout bomb in an aeroplane, and all these kind of things. And you don't have things like pornography on terrestrial television at 2:00 in the afternoon. So your granny sits down with her granddaughter. What should we watch on TV? And then there it is. So what we do is we censor things. We have appropriate times to have things. We have regulation in place so that we have just a better functioning society, really. So there is a spectrum of like, well, where do you draw the line for kind of regulation of speech? Like it's great saying freedom of speech, but actually when it gets dangerous or when it gets really inappropriate, we do something about it. So the question is, what do we do about it whatever it is, and how do, you know, if that is a subjective line along this spectrum, then how do we navigate that, given that everyone's going to have a different opinion of where we draw that line? But no one draws a line right down here. Not a single human being is actually a free speech absolutist. No one is. You know, you reprimand your children for saying things out of turn and out of line. You regulate people in your workplace, in society, for saying things out of line. You know, we are not free speech absolutists. Okay, so what do we do as far as a government is concerned when people are exhibiting or are saying things that end up being actually dangerous, that harm people's lives? Like, not just in a psychological way, but literally in a physical harm kind of way. So that was the situation with COVID-19 and all the disinformation that went on surrounding that, that is now manifesting in all these kind of problematic things like the executive order in the United States to not to fund any school that mandates vaccines for the children. I was like, okay, so that we've now got to a point where all of this disinformation has manifested itself in a really dangerous landscape of health denialism, vaccine denialism, and health skepticism and science skepticism. And that is dangerous. So, you know, do we do something about that or not? Do we just go, oh, it's free speech? Oh, but yeah, we've just got a pandemic now where like 50,000 people have died and we need to do something about it. And it's all come from, you know, all of these free speech situations. Well, it's free speech, so we can't do anything about it. Oh, do we let 500,000 die? Yeah, because free speech. Okay. Or do we go, right, we need to start doing something positive to protect our citizens, right? Because that's the job of a government, right? Okay. So it's difficult though, because no one likes being censored and having their speech regulated, but the government is responsible for looking after their citizens. Anyway, that's what this is about. Now, so that's kind of where Jasmine Crockett was coming from, and saying, well, look, you know, this is what happened during COVID and blah, blah, blah. And now we're at a situation where people can't even say that Russia has invaded Ukraine. So, you know, you're all free speech people, but you're kind of self-censoring in this ridiculous scenario where you are denying reality. Like, this is what a crazy world we live in. That's how I would finish that. So Jen Jordan's answer to this is, okay, it's not, the government's job is not to regulate speech. And we need to fact check by fact checking each other. Okay, which you might think, okay, that's a reasonable position. So let's hear Jen Jordan.
To be clear, your challenge, I think, was across the aisle, because I think every member on your side of the aisle agrees with the obvious fact that Vladimir Putin ordered the filthy, bloody, imperialistic invasion of Ukraine. And in fact, at the time, Donald Trump as president never denied it. In fact, he praised it. He said it was, quote, an act of genius when Putin ordered the invasion of Ukraine. So I would hope some of our colleagues would consent to at least that historical point, since we think history is so important. There are people who want to relive that in our oversight report.
And therein lies the problem.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
I'd yield to the chairman.
I just wanted to make a point. We talked, gentlelady, previous speaker talked about factual information. We've talked about fact-checking. Fact-checking. You know what fact-checking is truly supposed to be in this country? The First Amendment. Not some expert who can sit on and look at posts and tweets and different things and say, oh, that's not factual, take it down. That's not how it works. Fact-checking is the First Amendment. Someone says something stupid, and that happens every day in this Congress. Someone says something crazy. Someone says something that's not quite true, not quite accurate. You know what the fact-check is? Someone says something else, and you have debate. That's what we do in this committee every day. And this is the committee who's supposed to protect that fundamental fact.
And this sounds quite reasonable until you understand that the person he's advocating for is Donald Trump, who is basically disallowed anyone that's critical of him to report, as freely on him. They've moved out critical mainstream media outlets and replaced them in the Pentagon and the White House, and they changed the White House press pool to say, no, we're going to be the ones dictating who is going to be in a White House press pool, and we're going to remove the New York Times, Reuters, Associated Press, get rid of these people and bring in people who are just obsequiously being yes men to whatever we say, and that's Newsmax, OAN, Breitbart, Daily Caller, etc., etc. So you're like, okay, well, you're saying we should be able to rebut what is being said and fact check that ourselves using the First Amendment, but you are restricting the First Amendment yourself, right? Or your dear leader is, and then you've got Jeff Bezos saying, right, personal liberties, but you can't say what you want to say. You can only say what I want you to say. Now, I know the Washington Post is his thing, right? So I guess he's got the right to do that. But is that really a good example of exactly what Jim Jordan is talking about?